Well, good afternoon everyone, and welcome to this Friday lunchtime webinar. My name is John Ridd and I'm taking the anchor role for today's talk, which is by Catherine Metters and is entitled Seating or Chair Options. Catherine is the lead consultant for the Workrite Consultancies division of Posturite, and she tells me that seating is one of the most common sources of problems that she finds in the office, so I think this would be a very timely and useful presentation. But before we start, just a couple of housekeeping issues that I need to mention. Firstly, if you have any technical problems with the presentation during this next sort of 20 minutes or so, then please use the panel on the right. I think it will be on the right of your screen where it says chat, and you should be able to type in your comments and then send it to the organisers, and our technical people will try to resolve those problems for you. Also, of course, if you have any questions for Catherine about her presentation, then use that same panel and send your questions to the panelists, and again I'll try and put some of those questions to her at the end of the presentation. So I think without wasting any more of your lunchtime with my introductory material, I'll hand straight over to Catherine for her talk on chair options. So Catherine, over to you.
Thank you, John. Yes, and welcome to Friday, always a good day of the week, and obviously on to chair options. Okay, thank you, John. And what I'm going to be covering today is obviously chair options, and for those of you who are experienced assessors, this will hopefully be a useful refresh for you. But what I'm trying to look at is, why suitable office seating is important, some of the common issues we all face, and how we can get standard seating correct, and obviously the options for when standard seating doesn't really fit the bill. Now, I only have a short time, and there will be some things that I'm unable to cover, but hopefully we can look at a fairly good range. And the other thing to say is, I've been, I suppose, talking about seating for 20 years, and there are still times when I need assistance. The market changes rapidly, and so what I would say is that help is always on hand, but the important thing is to gather the right information to be able to get people to help you with the various options that are available. So what is the purpose of office seating? Well, I've really sort of put it into sort of four categories. Stability, to reduce fatigue, to allow a good flexible working position, and to get people working effectively. As you can see from my picture, some people also find other uses for office seating, but we will not be talking about those today. Obviously, the chair provides a firm base from which the body is able to work from. Providing a firm base also helps to reduce fatigue. We also have to remember that people use seating not only at work but also at rest. At home we all sit to relax, and this often can cause problems in the fact that people think that they can use the same seated posture at home as they do in the office, or should I say the other way around. So if people are curling up on the sofa in the evening and feel comfortable, they often find it strange that we don't think that curling up on an office chair is a good idea. So seating is a universal, but obviously we are looking at it from a purpose of work. So what are the main drawbacks of sitting? Those of you that know me, I'm a big advocate of standing to work and lots of varied postures. And I think this probably summarises what the problems with seating are. It is difficult to achieve a good spinal position in sitting because of the relationship between the lumbar spine curve, the pelvic position, and the thighs and the hips, because of the way the muscles and the ligaments all work. We all know that we should try and have a lumbar spine curve, but that is very difficult if the pelvis position is not correct and if it's not supported. Sitting, because it provides support, does not produce movement. And again, this lack of activity is not very good for us, and we'll be seeing a lot in the press, or certainly recently, and we'll be seeing more about how poor inactivity is for us. Sitting also can produce areas of high pressure, particularly on the thighs and over the buttocks, and this can cause problems. Being supported in a position also actually restricts the ability to reach and also restricts vision. If you're sat at a low area, your ability to see your colleagues can also be an issue. And as I've already suggested, limiting movement also reduces your circulation, inhibits good respiration because you are compromising your diaphragm often, and leads to reduced metabolism, and therefore unfortunately has negative consequences on our overall health. So what are the aims of a good seat? We know that sitting for long periods is not good for us, but we need to make sure when we do sit that we are able to get good support. So a good seat should support the body in a good position. It should support good alignment, not have high pressure areas, should be stable, and shouldn't restrict our position. And ideally, if it's possible, actually promote movement as well, which would be so much better for our health. Seems fairly easy, but we know that frequently we land up with problems. So what are some of the common problems? And I'm sure a lot of you will agree with most of this. Quite often we see that there are wrong dimensions for the user. Maybe the seat pan is too long for somebody with shorter thighs. They only have two options. One, to actually sit forwards on the chair so that they do not get pressure behind the knees, which will allow them not to have good spinal support. If, however, they chose to sit back in the chair, they would land up with pressure behind their knees. So that's a simple example of just a wrong dimension for an individual. We do sometimes see that the chairs themselves are the wrong shape. We're all different shapes and sizes, and if you have a very pronounced inward curve in your lumbar spine, you're going to need a more padded, more shaped backrest. Symmetry. Nearly all chairs that are produced in symmetrical, because most human beings are relatively symmetrical. But we do have a lot of employees now who sometimes do have asymmetry. For example, those perhaps with a scoliosis, or maybe those with one limb instead of two lower limbs. So we need to sometimes make sure that what we provide would be able to support the different body shapes and sizes. I see a lot of situations where the arms on the chair actually restrict positions, particularly in the case for curved desks. And this could actually cause quite significant problems because people have to adapt to this situation. I've talked about movement, and sadly, a lot of the times we see that it's not a problem with the chair or the desking arrangements, it's actually the whole system is poorly set up. The chair may be able to fit the individual, but if it's not set up correctly, then it will cause a problem. I'd like to share with you a nice situation that a colleague of mine found. This is a chair, I suppose, or certainly a seating option. And I suppose it does have some height adjustability in it, but I don't think that we would recommend it as a seating option. So how do we get it right, or how can we attempt to get it right? I think, first of all, observation. Really important. Observe somebody at work. Look at what their shape is like. Look at what they actually have to do. Explore what is wrong with the current fit, if there is a problem with the current fit. We need to discuss with the individual any particular concerns that they have. Maybe they need additional support in a certain place, or maybe they're concerned about a certain activity they're doing. We need to understand how the person is actually working. So do they need to be very stable? Do they have the ability to lean back in their chair to cogitate, and therefore, the use of a headrest might be useful? Are they able to sit to stand? The type of chair that we provide for that would be completely different from a chair when they're sat all day. And do they need to reach for items? So we need to understand what the chair needs to do to be able to provide a good solution for them. The other thing we may need to consider is the environment in which the chair is to be used. In certain manufacturing environments will be very different from a office environment. Maybe you've got a hard floor. That sort of issue needs to be addressed. Measurements. I'm always going on about measurements. I think a lot of Posturite staff, they all know that I'm on about this, but this really is the key. If you're not quite sure what chair needs to be provided, if you take these measurements and you contact different suppliers, they will be able to provide you with options. Just simply run through the ones on your screen so you know what I'm talking about. Measurement A is a measurement from the knee, back of the knee to the floor, and this would give you an idea as to what the gas stem height might be. B is the distance from buttock to the back of the knee, and this is an indication as to how long your seat pan would need to be. Obviously there needs to be a slightly shorter distance on your seat pan to ensure there's a gap behind the knee. Taking the measurement C from the seat pan to the shoulder would allow you to ask about chairs with backrests of a certain height. D is the distance between the seat base to the apex of the lumbar spine curve. Now in reality the apex is actually where the body curves in, not necessarily where the physical bony lumbar curve is, because we're all different and some of us unfortunately have larger bottoms than others and therefore our effective curve is slightly higher. Measurement D is from the seat pan to the occiput, to the back of the head. If you're supplying a headrest on a chair, you'll need to know this measurement to make sure you provide a chair with the right size headrest. And G is the height of the desk. Again, that will give you a good indication about the gas stem height that you might need. All fairly logical, fairly easy to take, but obviously if you don't have them, it does make making the decision about what chair to give much more difficult. So what are our options? Well, we do have different option chairs for different body types. Smaller users are often more difficult to accommodate, I think, than larger users. But smaller chairs we find with shorter, narrow seat pans are available. We can find armrests that are adjustable, because if you sit in a chair and your arm is much wider for you, it does affect your upper limb position quite considerably. And again, there are different gas stems available if people need to sit lower. Larger users, we have, not surprisingly, longer, wider seat pans available. We have shaped seats for those people that have pressure problems due to the size of their limbs. We're also able to have the adjustable armrest widths and more robust chairs with higher weight limits, which have stronger components, so we're able to accommodate people with these different needs. We may be looking at a more active sitting. We quite often have perch stools and chairs like this. Now, I'm afraid those of you that know me know that I love my Capisco chair, which is shown here. But it does allow for a variety of positions. But this is not going to be suitable necessarily for somebody who's going to be sitting for the whole of their shift, albeit with breaks. This type of active sitting would need to be used with a higher desk because of the position of the thighs. It does allow more activity for the user, and it also allows more movement and reaching. So for me, if one's able to have a more active sitting posture, then it is good. I didn't actually want to include exercise balls in this talk, but I felt the more I thought about it, the more I thought this was something that would come up. So I really just want to say this, in the fact that I think exercise balls are great exercise tools, but they're not necessarily great chairs. And I'd be quite interested in actually understanding what you, the people out there listening to me, and your view and your company's views on exercise balls are. And I wondered if you could please answer the poll that I'm going to put in front of you, and to ask you whether you allow how you allow your staff to use exercise balls at work. So do you allow them to use them instead of chairs? Do you use them as part-time, so with a chair? Or do you not allow exercise balls at all? So my viewpoint is that exercise balls are great things for exercise, but they're not really a chair, and I think that is the division that we should be using. So I think at this point, let's move on. The next thing that I want to talk about is the actual actions on chairs. Chairs have lots of different actions and there's often a lot of debate, and so I just thought I'd try and take the opportunity to talk a little bit about what different types of actions you can have. Now, in the three pictures that are on the screen, the top chair, we actually have the seat, base and back fixed together. So there is no movement between the two, so the angle between the legs and the back remains constant. If you see the chair below, I've tried to identify it with the red lines. In the left-hand side is the chair in a sort of normal position, where you've got the angle slightly open in between the thigh and the back. When the gentleman leans back in the chair, as you can see, the angle between the thighs and the back opens up. Now, if that opens up too far, it allows the pelvis to rotate back, which will negatively impact on the lumbar spine curve. Quite often also, if you lean back like this, you find that the bottom moves forward slightly. So when the chair returns, or when the person returns to a more upright seated position, they remain in a sort of slouched position. So this can, although it provides movement, it can not necessarily help to support a good support of the lumbar spine. Moving on to two other chairs. Again, the top chair, we can see the relationship in a neutral upright position, being fairly open between the thighs and the back. When the gentleman leans back, there is a movement between the seat pan and the back, but it is at a ratio, so for every angle the seat comes up, the back goes back a little bit more, so it's a controlled opening of the spine. So this again promotes movement but has some control over the pelvis and therefore the spinal position. And the last option at the bottom is a chair where the angle between the seat pan and the back can be fixed, and when movement occurs, it is movement of the whole chair, so the back and the seat move together. So you have movement, but yet the spinal position is supported. This can often be very useful for people with irritable lower back conditions. They find movement can cause a problem. Now, there are some options with arms, as you can see. Arms on chairs, we can get lots of different types. We can have ones that are adjustable in height and width and depth. We can also get ones that can be weighted to make sure that the person has good support for their upper limb. The arm in the top right-hand corner allows that and really takes a lot of support, provides a lot of support for the arm. You can also have arms that swing back out of the way, and you can have things on the armrests to give a little bit more comfort, like armrest covers. There are options for the seat back. You can obviously change the dimensions of the back. You can have lumbar pumps that will change the curve in the lower back. We can also have airbags, as you can see in the top right-hand corner, placed anywhere on the spine to help support asymmetry of the spine. Obviously, headrests and neck rests are there. We can have extra foam to provide extra padding. We can also put memory foam on seat backs to provide additional comfort. You can also have split back chairs, which I show here, which can be very useful for people who are slightly asymmetrical in the lower back, particularly those with small scoliosis can be very useful for. We can get options for the seat pad as well. As say, the dimensions can be there. We can add airbags to provide different levels of support. Split seats can be useful for particularly people with prosthetics can be useful for. And again, we can put extra foam. I would caution with memory foam though, because the volume we can put on a seat pan will often just squeeze down with the weight of an individual and not be very effective. So really extra foam is often better in that situation. And as you can see, the last one on the right hand side is a coccyx cutout. So for those people with damaged coccyx or pressure problems on their coccyx, this will help reduce the pressure on their coccyx area. There are lots of different chair coverings as well. There is fabrics, mesh, there are vinyls and things that we can wipe clean. There are ones that are resistant to various microbes. We can have ones that are bleach resistant, so they can be cleaned from that sort of aspect as well. So many different options on that one. As far as what the chair sits on, caster options, there are a wide range. We have from the regular ones soft rubber casters that were helpful with hard floors where there is some control movement needed. We have glides that will stop the chair rolling on a hard floor. We have brake-loaded casters for people who perhaps need to transfer, so they need the chair to be stable when they're transferring into it, but they need to be able to move the chair around when not. And brake-unloaded, when they need to, the chair needs to stay static, but when the person is in the chair, they need to pull themselves maybe into a workstation. We are also able to provide individually locked casters, which allow people to carers or other people to lock maybe 1 or 2 casters to provide limited movement but with some control. Just to put a few miscellaneous items together. We are able to put swivel lock on chairs for those people that perhaps find transferring difficult or maybe have vestibular problems. There is an ability to have electrical height adjustment. There are electrostatic discharge chairs for people who use perhaps in the electrical industry. We have chairs that can be used for 24-hour usage, or even quite specialist chairs like the phlebotomist arm, so we can actually put items on the chair as well. So really, I just want to sort of summarise that sort of whirlwind through seating options. Seating is all too often blamed for musculoskeletal discomfort, although for a lot of us time it is actually the setup and use of the chair that's the problem, rather than actually the chair itself. However, we need to make sure that the chair does fit the user, they know how to use it, and they understand that activity, no matter how good your chair is vital for health. And we need to have options, some of them are explained, for when there are particular needs, and we are usually able to apply those options so people can sit comfortably. So, final thought for a Friday afternoon, comfortable seating, and I think on that note, John, I'm done. So over to you.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Catherine, for that. I'm sure it's given us all a lot of food for thought, and if, like me, I wonder how many of us listening were actually correcting their seated posture during your presentation. I seem to be doing it continuously. For my part, I know that despite this fairly intimate relationship that I have with my chair, I really don't properly understand how it works. A bit like the wife, really. But anyway, moving on. The poll, Catherine, that you asked us about, let's see if I can share the results with everybody just shortly. It seems, no names, no pack drill, but it seems that most of us listening do not allow exercise balls to be used in the office, although some obviously do, and that's often the case where physios or doctors have said this person should use them. But I think we all take your point about the problems that may arise from using these. So we've had a number of questions for you, Catherine, if we have just a little bit of time, I think, before we have to end this. But let me see if I can pick out just a couple of them. One is mentioned that, you mentioned that the mesh backrests to chairs is quite common these days, and I think, yes, I would certainly agree. You see these everywhere now. And the question really is, well, is it something that we should be looking to provide? Is it better? Do you have a view on that?
Oh, I do have several views on that. I think mesh backrests, I think they allow a certain amount of air movement, which can be very useful, although if you're in a drafty environment, that can be quite a negative thing. So I think we need to consider where they're being used. I also think we need to consider the mesh will only give support if it has either got an additional support behind it, or if the mesh is taut and the frame is shaped. Otherwise, if you've just got a square, for example, or circular back with no other tensioning on it, if you lean against it, it'll just bottom out like a hammock. So it needs to be tensioned correctly. Ideally, I think you should have some sort of additional support. And secondly, the back needs to be shaped. So I think that's my viewpoint. Mesh can be useful, needs to look in the environment and actually the construction of the chair.
When you say it needs support at the back, are you just talking about a lumbar support or generally more support?
I think some of the lumbar supports I think are very effective. I think I'd like to see the support with a well-shaped frame around it,
Right.
so that the frame helps to provide the support in the shape of the person, if that makes sense.
Thank you. Yes, yes, indeed. Another one here then, another question. We don't have the budget to provide the sort of fully featured chairs that you've described, but what are the essential features that I should insist on? I guess this is from someone who gets involved in procurement.
Yeah. I mean, obviously we have to fulfill the DSE regulations, so your 5-star base, your height adjustment, your seat height and adjustment, your back height and tilt adjustment. If I was able to provide that and I had money left over in my budget, I think I would then invest it into having a seat slide, so you could adjust the depth of the seat. You would fit far more people with that. And if I had money on from that, I think I would invest in some decent adjustable height armrests. That would sort of be my viewpoint. Once I've hit the requirements of the regulations, I think seat slide will be my next optional extra, as it were.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you for that, Catherine. I can see why you say that. Finally, I think perhaps because of time, we've got one more here. What about meeting room chairs? Not quite the same thing you were talking about, but meeting room chairs, should these be adjustable for height?
Oh, now that's an interesting one. I think 2 points on that. I think ideally I'd be looking to have shorter meetings and ones that you could actually stand up with too. So I think in a way, I don't think meeting room chairs should be used for long periods of time. If, however, meeting room chairs are used for long periods of time, and increasingly people are bringing their laptops and tablets in with them, I think it is becoming increasingly important that meeting room chairs do have height adjustment in them. If, however, in meeting rooms people are literally meeting and writing notes, then probably that's less important. But I see people in meetings frequently now hunched over their laptops, and obviously having height adjustment in the chair, I think, would be very important then.
Excellent, thank you. Yeah, okay. Well, I think we're really coming to the end of this presentation time now, and so thank you, Catherine. Thank you very much for an enlightening and informative presentation. And of course, I'd like to thank all those listening as well for taking the time to join us. I hope you found it useful, and if you'd like a downloadable certificate of attendance, then please do respond to the email address, which I think should be on your screens at the moment, events@posturite.co.uk, and Posturite will arrange to send out to you an attendance certificate. And I think finally then, I'd just like to mention, just like to ask you really to join us for our future monthly lunchtime webinars, which will be held on a variety of topics, not all necessarily on office-based products, but on business-based issues, and quite a wide range of these issues that we're going to try and get both Posturite internal and indeed external experts to talk to you about. And we'll obviously be putting out a program for you to see which of those you'll be interested in. But for now, can I wish you a very good afternoon and goodbye, everyone.